Welcome back to the One Brick at a Time podcast. Uh,
Hello, everyone.
I
What's
hope that came through. Otherwise, I'll just edit that all out.
It was very
Um,
loud. It was very loud.
yeah. Uh, but yeah, welcome to the One Brick at a Time podcast. We have a lot to get through. Am I very loud?
Just a little bit.
Let
Just a
me
little
pull
bit.
my tools.
Just a
We're
little bit.
leaving this in.
Let's leave it in. Let's
I
leave it in.
started out really editing these a lot, and then it almost seems better if I go.
No, just
I do want to see my volumes and stuff,
the
though.
only thing we should ever edit out is something that we don't want publicly said.
And who's to say if I've done that or not? You'll never
What do you
know.
mean? Yeah, what do you mean?
Okay, I can see yeah, we'll pull my levels down a little
Edit
bit.
edit what out?
There we go. Um, Welcome back to this shambolic episode.
It's going
Both of
great.
us are in that mood of we just got done with our day jobs and we still have that kinetic energy. And as soon as we hit
Yes.
end on record, we're probably going to die.
I'm going out. I'm going out. It's gonna be
He's
fun.
going out. I'm gonna not. Um, no, we had a very busy week. First and foremost, the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl.
Go Birds.
We are about to spend about 3 hours talking about Saquon Barkley, Jalen Carter, Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, everyone
Yeah.
that makes that franchise so great.
Go Go Birds. Always.
Go Birds. No, we have a lot to talk about. Trump's been busy, man. You can't say he's not doing a lot.
He's working.
We are gonna miss some things today. I will
Yeah,
also
yeah.
just say that there's been so much that I would love to talk about the pause on foreign aid, but quite frankly, of the things that we need to talk about, that didn't even make like the top. Well, probably six.
Yeah.
Six is where I'd rank it. We're gonna miss some of the. We'll try to come back and do these if we can. Miss a little bit of the confirmation hearings that we talked about in our first episode.
Mhm.
Those are happening right now. We're going through. Hegseth got through on he exactly as many votes as he needed to get in, and RFK is going through right now, and it doesn't seem like it's looking great for Mr.
Yeah, I saw
Jr.
some pretty contentious things with his, so we'll see.
Yeah, they're sticking it to him pretty good. So let's get into the pause, right? And I've tentatively titled this episode "Freeze." It's a very nice mug.
No, it's an audio thing here. You can keep going. I'm just
Okay,
gonna.
okay.
This is for our YouTube patrons.
Yeah. How to even start going about this? So normally,
Let's set the agenda. Let's set the agenda.
yeah, let's talk about everything we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the freeze. So we'll mention the foreign aid a little bit in there. Out of OMB. What's OMB? We'll tell you what OMB is. Don't worry.
Don't Google it.
A smaller sort of middle story in there, small little sandwich story, is Trump trying to fire a whole bunch of civil servants.
I see. Yeah, that was crazy.
There's like two different things that this categorizes as, and I think, again, if our job is to educate, I think this is one of the areas where I have the most to offer in explaining like what's going on and connecting people to the news. And then tariffs are coming up tomorrow. We would have had a full episode anyway, and they're just like, oh yeah, and then the next biggest thing. Tomorrow is when they're supposed to drop 25% on Mexico and Canada, 10% on China, with the exception of oil. It sounds like oil's not going to get tariffed, but everything else will be.
Because he wants gas prices to be low.
Got to keep the gas prices
low.
And we'll get into that as well. I'm going to do my absolute best to be fair and balanced today, but man, if sometimes fair and balanced is calling balls and strikes. So this is going to be, I'm going to try to be fair, but I think to be fair is to be critical, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, also, it's critical of the most important positions in our entire country. So
yeah, you're president of the United States, man.
Yeah, no, critical is fair.
High standard.
We should. Well, I think, but to double that though, you should acknowledge anything that even accidentally was positive.
Sure.
That's very
okay. If I can,
I've talked about this. This is my philosophy on it. If you can say a good thing about someone, you're more reliable when you say something bad about somebody.
Sure.
But if you're just like an all-time hater on anybody, left, right, then you're less reliable as a source. So we'll find something to smile at today, people.
Yeah. God, we aren't even touching immigration today, which feels crazy.
I feel
Like,
like we could fit in immigration.
maybe it'll come up naturally, but let's get in with this OMB pause. So normally, part of this
Hey,
isn't
hey, Royer, what's OMB stand for?
Office of Management and Business.
Cool.
Let me actually double check that one. I have the copy of the pause.
He's such the confidence with which he says these
Hi.
things, and then I think probably.
Management and budget. I think I said business. It's budget.
Okay, got it.
Um,
What do they do?
Not this. Honestly, you can go your whole life without knowing what the OMB is and probably be okay. They're not big decision makers. They're much more paper pushers, right? Is always
Nice.
how I've always understood the OMB to be. Their role in this is really minor. It's just this is the executive office that Trump had to kind of pull this off. What is this that we're talking about? Uh, Normally, when you have a new administration come in, even of the same party, they're going to look at everything that was being done and review it and then decide if we should keep doing that thing or not. Like, you would do this if you bought a business, right?
Okay, yeah.
You would make sure that, things are being run efficient. You might have different preferences. You might change the logo. So the fact that there's a lot of changes going on, I want to be very clear, like, this isn't weird. You would expect this. It's a new administration. They're going to do things their own way.
Okay.
That being said, normally you review the program and then figure out if you're going to continue to fund it. You don't cut the funding first for everything.
That it's crazy.
And then have it pending review. So I got the order here in case we need to reference it.
It's a good one. I saw it. It was a good memo.
Oh, it's not though. It's
It
so
was.
bad.
It was so
It
crazy
is.
to read. So full transparency into my life, I'm not going to name names, but I worked to support school districts. I was working with a certain school district, state entity, that we were working on like building out like this partnership for them to help support students, basically. And then like a moment before we were about to get started, we got this huge freeze in their funding, and they're like everything's on pause. Like my job's on pause. Everything I do for school districts in X state is on pause. So it like immediately affected my personal life. I was shocked at how like, oh wow, that was like immediately.
Like instant. And we can talk about the politics of this as we get into it a little bit, but I want to make sure like the government side gets covered first because that's way more important in people's lives right now.
Yeah, go ahead.
It is all federal aid that's not an entitlement is the easiest way I'll say to put it. They don't say entitlement and they don't mention specific programs in the actual memo, which I thought was a huge mistake. They basically said anything that's not aid going directly to Americans. So the big one, Medicare and Social Security, clean, right? Those are not affected by this pause. Medicaid, on the other hand, is, which is not great. More people use Medicaid than I thought.
How many?
I don't know the exact number, but it's more than you think, right? So it's not just like very poor people. It's often like the elderly and stuff like that get assistance from Medicaid. But that means almost everything that's any sort of federal aid is being shut down. So to your anecdotal point there, Alex, with the school districts, right? And it's not even that they don't necessarily have the money. It's more of even if you could still, afford whatever it is you're doing, you just don't know what your budget is now, right? And so if you are, even if you're a school district that's doing fine, you now have to rethink all of your spending. Even though the pause got paused by a federal judge, you still have to, it'd be super irresponsible to assume that's going to be the end of it, right? So now everyone is freaked out because they don't know how much money they're going to have to spend.
90 million people in 2022 are registered with Medicaid.
Oh, wow.
That's like it's almost a third of our country.
Almost a quarter of the country.
Probably a fourth now.
Using Medicaid in some way, right?
Yeah.
And there's been, I don't know, there's been confusion on this in a way that's just super embarrassing and unprofessional, where you see the White House is saying one thing, the memo saying another thing, and then legislators, Republican senators and stuff are saying a third different thing, right? No one has any idea what's actually affected by this thing or not.
Yeah.
I also hate just the way this review is supposed to be taking place. If you read the memo, the goal is not to, you know, I get you want to review these programs and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Hmm.
Particularly if you're a conservative government and you're worried about government waste and overreach and all that. This is all a
Yeah.
very natural thing to do. However, the goal is not, is your program being effective? Your goal is your program matching the priorities of the new administration, right?
Hmm.
So it at the bottom of the first page, it mentions Trump issued a series of executive orders to protect the American people and safeguard valuable taxpayer resources, including. Then it lists a whole bunch of the executive orders. We got immigration. We've got the one that ends the foreign aid. We've got American energy, radical and wasteful government DEI programs and preferencing. So all of these different executive orders. And effectively, what it does is it's supposed to pause all of this money from January 28th to February 10th. So that gives all of these agencies 12 days to show not that their spending is being used effectively in accomplishing its stated goals, but to show that it is working towards the goals of the Trump administration, whether it's effective or not, right? Like
Yeah.
that's not a listed criteria.
Yeah.
It has
Wow.
no guidance on like what this review is supposed to look like otherwise. It has no sort of concept of who is going to be reviewing all of these. If it's going through the Office of Management and Budget, holy crap, like they need to get locked and loaded because if you have every federal department and all of that money and all of those different programs with like weird criteria coming through, they don't have the manpower to get through that stuff in a reasonable amount of time, particularly
Yeah.
with that lack of guidance. So this whole thing, top to, it's either incompetent or malicious. In either way, it's
That
disqualifying me.
that's what I was gonna say. Is like it almost seems there's a philosophy to it. It feels as if the goal for them is to like they're not trying to think of the best way to do it. They're trying to think of the fastest way to do it, and they
Yes,
don't care about collateral damage. They're like,
absolutely.
we just want to get from X to Y in a week. Who gets hurt in that process? We don't care. We just want to get here in a week. They're just trying to bull
Speed. For
bull in
some,
a
I don't.
bull,
I
bull
don't
in a no.
understand the rush.
They're trying to bull in China shop this thing
Right.
like as fast as possible. So it's like their philosophy for the work genuinely is like we know we're going to have to break a lot of eggs to make this omelet, but we need an omelet. Like that's
Yeah.
where their mindset is at. Is like which is not maybe the best mindset to have. I'm saying, but like you can tell that they don't give a about like
Right.
giving anybody a real chance to understand what this is for, how to report it. Like you said, like because I read the memo, the people I worked with shared the memo. Like, no, this is the freeze we're seeing, and I'm reading it and I'm going like, this is the most like I don't know anything by reading this
Right.
memo. I don't know a single thing.
It
It's the
just
most
says in all
confusing.
caps.
Yeah, it's the most
Must
confusing thing I've ever
temporarily
read.
pause. The rest of it is so far up to interpretation.
It's insane up
Yeah.
to interpretation. You would have 500 follow up questions as an agency to this memo.
Yes.
It is weird.
It's and again, if we're gonna be fair, right?
Yeah,
I think conservatives especially tend to be more willing to sacrifice. They will if it's 10% less effective, but 20% more efficient and simpler, they're usually willing to make that trade-off,
yeah, yeah.
right? And that's a preference thing. This feels like a lose-lose, right? It feels like it is not actually that much more efficient or simpler and is also, not going to be as effective.
I think when you have people who have traditionally had so much power to make decisions, when things go slow in the government like they do, because there's so many checks and balances, they don't understand why.
Right.
It's like, no, when I say
Yeah,
what I
absolutely.
say I want, that happens. Why is this taking longer than a week? I don't understand. Like, they're not used to that mindset. And I think if you asked anybody who's reasonable, they could say, yeah, the government isn't perfectly efficient. Like, we
No.
definitely do. We have so much fat that we
Absolutely.
can trim from our processes, from our spending, all of that. But the idea of the biggest thing for me is like anybody who says they're going to make the government more efficient, that makes me happy. It's just like it could be way more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of freezing the spending before you know what you're freezing
Right.
is the thing that's so
Right.
so crazy. It's
Yeah.
like, no, assess and then slowly trim off.
Right.
Like, you don't just freeze everything that we do.
And it's like if I'm getting like really trying to think of it politically, right? The politics of it.
Mm-hmm.
And your whole thing, if you're like Donald Trump, is like, we're going to shrink government. Why wouldn't you kill these programs one at a time, right?
Yeah.
Every week we got a new federal program that we've, eliminated, whether it's, this random thing or another random thing. Why not like pull some of this out a little bit and have a few news cycles where you can really
Milk
get
it.
into it?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Maybe they're not thinking politically, like, right, like, if you're going to be the devil's advocate, they don't
Right.
care about politics, which, okay, I'm saying
it's kind
this,
of what they ran on.
yeah,
You are
exactly.
gonna be reckless.
Do it reckless quickly. It's kind of what they ran on, is like big changes fast. That's like been their whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just been shocking to see the like, because basically I think the damage that you could cut everything and then maybe nothing happens, right? Everything's fine. Oh my gosh, it was
Right.
we had so much waste. It's actually been nothing but beneficial. That's the dream world that they're in. Where that could happen, fine. But I think what you stand to lose by cutting everything so fast is so much worse than if you had taken your time and ended up spending
Absolutely.
more money than you probably should have with hindsight.
Right.
It's like,
but the cost benefit is just
yeah, exactly. Like you always
reasonable.
could use hindsight. Like, well, we wasted 20 million taking our time. It's like, that's fine. Like you did, it was a precautionary thing to not freeze
Right.
everything before you.
It's walking in and putting your chips all on black, but the payout is not the same as if it was. You know what I mean? It's like the payout's still not even that great.
Do you remember the person? You don't. They'll keep this very short. I'm a huge fight fan. Amanda Nunes was fighting somebody. Forgot her name. She was 1,000 to 1 to win. Somebody bet 600 grand on Amanda Nunes to win because it's a lock. It's 1,000 to 1.
Right.
To make like 60 grand. And they lost. She lost, and that person lost 500 grand because they were trying to make 60. It's like,
That's
dude,
pretty funny.
just take your time. Don't throw all your chips on black.
Yeah,
Just do one at a
with
time.
That sport in particular.
It's
that's not one I would,
it's such a volatile sport.
I would not do that.
But you're right. If you're trying to cut agencies, the idea that all agencies could be subject to the same level of like just quick rip the Band-Aid off, it's like it doesn't work that way.
And
some things are more immediately needed.
Again, it's just the criteria that they're having to evaluate against you. I think it's so overtly political and like not a it's so narcissistic and weird.
It was weird. It's weird.
You would at least like here's the thing, like this stuff does happen, right? You would at least frame it as like using taxpayer dollars to help the American people, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would make it about they do it a little bit, but not nearly enough. You would make it about the taxpayer, not your executive orders. You know what I'm saying?
You'd also be shocked too at somebody that fair enough. People who are not on his side politically have testified that Trump's a great salesman. That's like his big thing. He's a good salesman, and people who don't support him politically have said that. You think he'd be a better salesman?
Yeah.
Like you think he'd be able to message these things better?
I have a theory. On this.
Let's go.
Because they also use my favorite word, which is mandate, in this freaking thing again.
I know. Let's not get into it.
I know. We've been over this.
Yeah, we've been over this.
But
technically,
it's
not a mandate.
They overestimate where their support came from. I think they think there's a lot more like proper mega folks out there, whereas I think where they were more successful is people who were just like, yeah, I want groceries to not be that expensive.
Exactly. They're
and
like
a lot of the things that they've been hammering and that have been in the press and making news are not grocery prices. You know what I mean? It's not the inflation in the housing. That should be. I would mention that they've stuck on this DEI thing. They blamed that plane crash on DEI hires. Like that's been what they've been going. No, everything you do should be housing prices, grocery prices. Housing prices, grocery prices.
Yeah.
If we're cutting DEI because we want grocery prices to be cheaper. I don't know.
Even if it makes no sense, but it's all about making gas cheaper or something. Yeah, exactly.
Also, I'll take a moment to say thoughts and prayers from the One Brick at a Time podcast for those who lost their lives in that plane crash. That was not great.
I don't know a lot about it. From what I heard, it was like I thought it felt like they did something illegal. Like they had one person managing two towers from what I read, but that's what I read. I don't know.
This is actually kind of worth getting into just as a brief
feels
aside.
Illegal. Like
we have had a very hard time through the Biden administration, basically since COVID, during COVID, a whole bunch of airlines cut a whole bunch of staff because people weren't flying because there
Yeah.
was a pandemic. And they've had this problem rehiring, or because when you
So
rehire
messed
these
up.
people, now that there's more demand, the job sucks because you're always overworked. And so you
Yeah.
have really high turnover, and they haven't been able to hire enough people to like fill those gaps because they keep leaving because they get burnt out so fast,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so this has been true of air traffic control, right? Which is like not an easy job. You really gotta. I couldn't do it.
You
I
got to
would
be
crash
locked
planes
in. You
every
have to be
day.
locked in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta have a very specific type of mental acuity. Acuity.
It's almost like on paper you could say, "Oh, maybe it's not that hard." It's like, yeah, but the stakes are so high if you're
Right.
not perfect.
Right.
Like you have to be. Yeah.
What it sounds like, I saw this on Twitter from someone who was a helicopter pilot. He's like, yeah, I've flown that helicopter route before. Is the way the planes were coming in, it sounds like the helicopter pilot might have assumed that the plane was going to a different runway. And that when they called for visual clearance, like, hey, did you see this plane go by? There was a plane that had previously, like just a few moments ago, gone by. So they might have assumed that was the plane that they were talking about. And so they weren't thinking about the second plane that was on a different route than they were expecting. Either way, it's just one of those things. I think it does point to, a problem that we need to fix with air travel. I do think it would be silly to blame the administration on this one. Like sometimes planes crash. It's just humans are.
Yeah. It's like not a.
Trump's
It's like,
remarks were really weird. He's just basically describing how helicopters work for like 5 minutes. It's very odd.
the most like yeah. I didn't see his statement.
He's got 3 different statements out there. None of them are what you would hope to hear.
Yeah.
It's not, oh, this is a tragedy. It was, they tried to blame it on DEI. And then another one is just him explaining how, like, helicopters work for, like, 5 minutes. And then another one was, like, how the hell do you crash a helicopter? they were very weird.
Well, yeah, that's weird. Okay.
But, again, this is one of those things, like, it looks terrible when you're in the middle trying to pause all federal aid. Not necessarily all federal spending, but aid, right? And you see clearly areas where we need to spend more money and try to allocate more resources. I just think it's a terrible look between the two. But yeah, I just want to say, as a podcast, I probably speak for Alex that, any families who are affected or anything like that.
I mean, yeah, it's unthinkable. Like
that'd be terrible.
I have no. Yeah. It's horrible.
So, any other thoughts on the spending pause?
Wow, what a transition, Xavier.
Hey, that's what I got, man.
Again, that was the roughest segue ever.
We got that getting off work on a Friday energy, man.
We do. No, but I can say like the funding pause, it affects like immediate people right away. It does seem like you said, the backwards way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I get
I was shocked at how immediate people felt it. Like you felt it, my mom felt it. There
the
was
day
a lot
of
of people in my
it's
life
like,
who were like,
boom. I was like, oh, whoa, yeah, it hits everywhere. And I think really it's just like you said, there's nothing wrong with trimming fat from the government, but you did it in the opposite order.
Yeah.
Like just assess and then cut. Don't cut everything and then assess. It makes no sense.
And then get on the same page. I think just the miscommunication too.
That's been the traditional thing. Like even when they have good ideas, it's like, can you tell somebody? Can you like inform anyone that this is coming?
Yeah. Or explain what is actually happening. Because to have like, senators going out there saying one thing and then having the White House say a different, It
reminds me
neither of which seemed like what the actual memo was supposed to say. So
it reminds me of the miscommunication between the CDC and the WHO during the COVID crisis. It was just constant conflicting information. Everyone's like, well, I don't know what to do. But anyway, next topic, firing civil servants or encouraging them to resign.
Yeah,
from what I read.
We've got 2 different sets of firing people.
Encouraging someone to resign is basically firing them or telling them that you don't want them there. But let's dive into this.
This actually shows a little bit of competence from the Trump administration, but then incompetence. They at least knew the law. So there are certain... I know.
Whoa! Hold on. New law. Let's go.
There are certain jobs in the government that you cannot fire people without cause.
Yep. Okay.
These are not political positions. Again, think paper pushers,
It is
right?
because I hate him. Sorry.
There's not.
Go ahead. Sorry.
They're not making decisions. They're the ones who make sure, like, things get filed, and then this goes
Yeah.
to accounting, and it's accounting, right? These are just people who have jobs in the government, and so the idea being we don't want to have huge turnover and churn every time we
Yeah.
have a new administration. So Trump really does want to put a bunch of people who are like really into Trump into these jobs, right? He just wants loyalty across the board. So he's like, I can't fire these people. Here's what we'll do. We'll offer an extremely generous severance package.
Was it extremely generous?
It was. We will pay you until September as though you were still working.
Oh, wow.
If you resign.
Okay.
Here's the problem with that. Because it's spending and Congress has the power of the purse, that would have needed to get approved through Congress. So still illegal. Can't do that. It's a clever workaround, I guess. You can't fire them, so let's just dangle this like really incentive package to like get them to quit and resign. I suppose I have respect for that. But it's like they knew the law that they couldn't fire them, but they didn't even think about they need that money to be appropriated by Congress.
Yeah, Congress needs to sign off. Like, otherwise, yeah.
It's not it's not the most dramatic thing that happened. I think it is concerning that that's a priority, is to move these sort of rank and file individuals.
Do you think from their messaging, because I feel like sometimes all you can do is go off what they say, because what else would you go off of, right? Like, speculating is not that efficient of a way to understand how people are thinking, or effective of a way. But is it about was the whole mindset like we need to trim the fat, or are you thinking he's trying to get people to resign, quote unquote? So
he's trying to replace individuals. I don't think he's trying to remove positions.
He's not trying to reduce. He's trying to replace.
There's probably a combination. That's a good point. I hadn't really thought of that.
What's their whole message? Remember, yeah,
because it's so blanket.
Yeah.
That again, if it was nuanced and there were people in certain positions that they're offering this to, but this was like a company-wide email that he just fired off to anyone at a certain level. He's really the all or nothing president, man.
Yeah,
he does not do stuff halfway. Like,
he's like broken plates be damned. Okay, we got to get through the storm. Like, he doesn't care. And I do think there is space for that mindset sometimes.
Sure,
like there genuinely is, but
the counterpoint.
We will see how it goes. Yes,
is Democrats never get anything done. They're so they let perfect be the enemy of good.
Yep,
and so they go the other way.
It's called being action oriented in the business world.
Yeah.
Just go do stuff. Get stuff done. If it's not perfect, that's fine.
The other set of firing people, and this one's a little bit more concerning. So every cabinet position has something. I gotta remember the name of it. The Inspector General. Inspector General. Very fancy name. Sounds like Sherlock Holmes.
Right? Isn't that what he does? He wears one of those hats and has a pipe?
He's just a regular inspector. He is not an Inspector General. I know.
What gadgets? Does he have gadgets?
He does not have gadgets. That's the other guy.
So what if he said... So you're telling me what happens if he says go gadget, ski boots or something?
Nothing.
That is
Watson,
probably...
make sure he's okay.
That is probably one of the most biggest disappointments of my entire life. Okay.
No, these are Inspector Generals.
A boring... Oh, he's a general. He commands an army?
No armies. They command, they audit people.
Wow.
The most boring thing in the world.
That is the single lamest news I've ever received.
Yes.
All right, Inspector Generals, go ahead.
Basically, they're moles that are put inside all of the offices to make sure that spending and stuff like that there's no fraud. And their job is basically, if something bad is happening, to let Congress know, or sometimes the Department of Justice, right, depending on what the issue is.
Yeah, right.
You good?
You said moles, and then I just imagined him eating dirt all day.
That's horrible.
So I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, but so they're the whistleblowers, right?
Yeah.
They're dedicated to that position, and he fired 17 of the 18 of them. Can't do that.
So they're not fired
legally.
Oh, okay.
But you have to let Congress have 30 days notice and. With cause. You can't fire them for no reason. But with cause, it's not like your workplace with cause. It is, you just need a reason. Like, if it's because I hate him, like, okay, sure.
We just need to know why. Yeah.
But they didn't give the 30 days heads up. They didn't have any sort of cause. What a lot of people wonder, and maybe this will answer your question. If not, then cut me off, but is if they're doing this intentionally, and there's a little bit of this going on. Again, credit where due. They're doing this intentionally so that way it will go to the court and they can challenge the constitutionality of this position in the first place. So that's like the best case, is they're doing this on purpose because they don't believe the position should exist, and then they can make the court case and argue it there. Go ahead.
Okay. My question was, if you do this illegally the first time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not allowed. You didn't do what you're supposed to do. Can they just go back and like find cause and then do it right?
Yeah,
or is that like they're like, oh no, you already fucked up. Like you don't get to just come back and redo.
No, you could go back and do it correctly.
Damn it.
Yeah. That would be crazy.
If he's firing them because they're
harder to do it the second time, because then I would say the level of what cause counts as is probably going to be a lot more scrutinized.
Yeah, of course. That makes sense.
Again, also, that's another one. I would drag that out a little bit. Firing all 17 out of 18 all at once. That's a lot.
That is also is because like, so their position is more to like confirm that like basically things are running the way they're supposed to,
prevent embezzlement, and make
corruption.
sure that there's not egregious incompetence, that kind of thing.
That is very concerning.
Yeah, this feels like a nonpartisan position. It feels like the judicial branch should pick people for this job, right?
Yeah,
like,
and the whole party that runs on this is my criticism. A party that runs specifically on ending corruption, you then fire 17 of the 18 people whose jobs are dedicated to fighting corruption?
Yeah, it's not a good look for sure.
Unless he's trying to replace them with people he thinks are less corrupt. Like maybe the attorney generals, from their perspective, aren't doing their jobs the way they should be. Is that the take you get? Or is it more just
No, it feels like he doesn't want to get caught doing some shenanigans.
So how do you conflate the two? Because before it sounds like you, and I'm just curious, with the government employees that are not attorney generals, it sounds like he's trying to replace them with more loyal subjects. Mm-hmm. But with these specifically, it sounds like he's, from your perspective, trying to just get rid of them and not replace them. How did you land there?
This one's a little because of the specific job that they're doing, right? And again, this is a hunch. We'll see what the Trump administration.
Oh, the fact that
does.
It's isolated means it's more targeted than like a general
right.
firing.
Well, and what the specific job is making sure that the government doesn't do anything weird, right?
Yeah.
And so if you were going to do something weird,
and he's the biggest fan of doing things that are weird,
right? Who keeps the secret better, right? Your best friend or nobody? Right?
Yeah.
Nobody keeps a secret better than anybody, right? Just by nature. So I
Wow.
think that's the idea.
You'd have been a good mobster, probably.
Even if the position exists, he's going to fill it with his own people, and it'll be
Right.
whatever. But yeah, it's not a good look. It sounds like it's also not uncommon for presidents to do this. So I will withhold a little bit of my judgment. This sounds like a pretty common thing to do.
That's weird. Okay.
Yeah, it's very odd. It feels like this is a good position to have, and we should
The intent behind it is
not
what you
let the
want.
person who's being
Kept in check.
Yeah, it sounds like there's just a conflict of interest in all of this here. Any question on firing people? He loves to fire people, man.
I mean, it's literally his slogan. It's his slogan. His slogan. It's weird that that's his slogan too. It's like, you're fired, right? It's like, why don't you just hire somebody good the first time?
Yeah, why do you keep making mistakes with your hiring?
Just have a better hiring process. Like, I get it, but like, just, dude, did you even check if they went to college? Like, if you're running a multi-billion corporation, like, you might want to do
Maybe
some
hire
kind of
better.
hire better. Just hire better. All right. Well, that's firing civil servants.
Gonna do the inverse. You're fired, which is you're hired until you retire.
Yeah, exactly. It all
You're gonna be here
has to
forever.
rhyme. It's a requirement.
It does have to rhyme.
That's what I require.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want fire today, dude. Oh my god, it never stops. It never stops.
It's
I keep
a really
rhyming.
easy one to rhyme.
Shut up. You don't know me. All right.
I know you better than almost everybody.
Yeah, pretty much everybody in the world. All right. Are you ready for tariffs?
Dude, am I ever ready for tariffs? Who's
not ready for tariffs?
Who's ready for tariffs?
Mexico, Canada, and China are very much not ready for tariffs. So get ready.
Yeah,
Brace yourself.
Mexico, Canada, 25%, China, 10%.
Oh.
Hey, Alex, how much
Suck it. I'm just kidding.
How much of American imports as a percentage do you think come from Mexico and Canada? How much as a percentage?
30%. 50%.
40%.
Okay.
So
Significant amount.
40% of all American imports are about to get 25% more expensive tomorrow.
Can we make them somewhere else in America?
That's the idea.
Okay.
You would hope. Now, when you say them, what do you mean?
What do you mean them?
You
I
said,
said
can we
we.
make them somewhere else in America?
Oh, products. Like maybe not maple syrup because Canada's got the best
Yeah,
stuff.
which products, man? Was your answer all of them? It's like, gee whiz, I sure hope so.
Yeah, like a lot of them. That's going to be weird.
It's not good.
Well, this is the thinking. I'm not saying it's not good or it's not bad right now, strictly because I don't know enough.
Okay. And this is, I will say, like, I will give the case for tariffs as well, but go ahead.
My thinking is there hope that tomorrow, the next week, the next month, the next 2 months, year even, things just get more expensive? And they're going to know, yep, that's part of how tariffs work. But then they're hoping, I'm assuming, that a bunch of businesses will pop up in America because they have a competitive advantage in cost.
That might be the hope.
Creating more American jobs. I'm assuming that's the whole point.
Here is what this is also the same administration that did the freeze.
Yep.
So a lot of credibility in terms of like long-term thinking. Not great there, right?
Yeah,
Prove me wrong on that.
That's
one
upsetting.
before I
That's
give you
upsetting.
that kind of benefit of the doubt. Additionally, it would be harder to start a new business because your material costs will have gone up, right? If you're thinking about like the raw materials and stuff that we import from Mexico and Canada because they're cheaper, the barrier to entry because that is the idea, right? Either new firms or existing firms pick up where that foreign material leaves off, right?
Yeah.
The case for tariffs, and they can be good, is the idea that you want your domestic industries to be able to compete better with those foreign industries. And you're basically saying you're okay with that price increase, right?
Yeah.
You're going to swallow it because having people buy the American or whatever country you're in is a valid trade-off. You completely lose that when you're just like 25% of everything.
Yeah, you're not like, what could we produce here before we
Right.
tariff what is produced somewhere else?
Right. The example I use in class is, if you wanted people to buy more American car brands, then you would tariff like Japan, to make Toyotas and Hondas and stuff more expensive, right? But you would do the cars. You wouldn't. You also don't want like
everything from
Nintendo
Japan.
Switches to get more expensive, right?
Yeah. That's just getting borderline, but yeah. Toyotas are so reliable, though.
Yeah, they're good. Toyota sponsor us.
Dude, dream.
Yeah,
I like my RAV4. I drive a limited NBD. Actually, I don't know what
I drive a
version it is.
Saturn.
Saturns are
They
Nissan.
run forever.
Yeah, dude, you've had that car. You've had that car for a while.
It's two different Saturns that look identical.
That's right.
The one got totaled, and we didn't mean to. It just that happened to be the most cost-efficient way to replace it.
I forgot that it's not the same Saturn.
It's
You
to go
bought
from a 2003 Saturn
identical
to a nearly identical 2005 Saturn Ion. One had a spoiler, the other one doesn't. Those are functionally the only differences between
That's
those two.
so funny.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, you don't like change.
No, I do. It's just that I'm poor. That was the car I could afford.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it runs. Sorry, go ahead.
No, the tariffs are coming out tomorrow.
Right.
One character that's emerged across all of this is the new press secretary. Can you? Let me get her name.
I assume that she is a thin blonde.
How did you know?
Trump. Is
Yeah.
she? I have not seen
He
her yet.
looks like if you put all of the Fox News female, broadcasters into an AI and had it create like a generic one.
Oh, yo.
That is what she looks like. Her
Caroline
name is
Leavitt.
Caroline Leavitt.
Caroline Leavitt. Yeah.
In here,
Wow.
I am going to.
Yeah, I was dead on.
No, it's kind of uncanny. I almost wonder if you knew that ahead of time.
She's 27?
She's 27 years old. Alex, how old are we?
I'm 29.
I'm 28. Do you feel like you would be capable of being press secretary of the President of the United States at the ripe age of
This is crazy. 27?
27 years old?
That is the most... If I was going to put... This is crazy.
And I will say, it's not that young people can't do stuff. They
They're
can.
worse than people who are older, typically. And unless we're talking sports, they're typically worse than somebody with more
And
experience.
press secretary it's a very hard position. If you've ever watched West Wing, it's CJ Craig's character. That's her job as press secretary. And at least once a day, sometimes multiple times, your job is to. The way I describe it is the same way as one of the toughest positions in football, which is field goal blocking, right? Because everyone who's trying to block the field goal is like just going full bore with reckless abandon. And you just have to, the way they coach it is die slowly until the kicker can get the ball off, and do the kick. That is what press secretary is you are just dying slowly up there at a podium, taking all sorts of crazy questions from reporters, trying to get you to say the wrong thing, right? You are effectively the public facing day-to-day voice of the administration, right? You were out there doing press releases, you were answering questions on behalf of the administration, and so it's very much a job of building relationships with the actual media people. You know who to call on when, you know who's going to be more fair in certain situations, and you really have to be quick on your toes because they are going to ask you tricky stuff. And
Yeah.
I feel terrible for this person.
Mm.
Um, because she accidentally took like one of the hardest jobs in politics. She's got some media background, but it is a job that you
Mhm.
should watch someone do for many, many years before you try to do it yourself. And so
Yeah.
she has been trying to talk about this memo. She has been trying to talk about these tariffs, and it's just not going swimmingly. She just goes out there and just gets shelled every freaking time.
I remember the reverse was true too. For they weren't 27, I don't think, but Biden's press secretary. It
Was
just
also terrible.
every clip was just her getting hit with the most
Yeah,
trap like questions I could possibly think of, and that's part of the job. Like
yes,
that's your job is to die
journalists
slowly.
are
Like you
supposed
said,
to keep the government accountable. We may have forgotten that as a country, but that is their job, is to
this is crazy. Oh
um
my goodness!
but it's
Wow.
been crazy to see her in the middle of all of this. We're talking about tariffs and all these big things, and it's, poor Carolyn Levitt just
She seems bubbly. I'll give her that.
that's
She
the
seems
thing.
like
That's not a
she'll.
press secretary. You want to be respected,
There's two different types of
you
bubbly
know?
though. There's bubbly that just cannot get phased. Like,
Right.
oh, someone stole your car. It's like, yeah, but the sun's out. Like that kind of bubbly. That's
Sure.
that's kind of what you want. You want somebody who's like happy
What if there's a
all the
war
time.
though? I think tone matters a lot.
Smile through the war. Let's go. But no, or her spirit will be crushed, and I really hope not. Like you
She's
said,
looking like the lad. Maybe she'll just get tougher. Or what I think is she'll get fired at some point.
she'll probably resign. She'll probably resign.
Yeah, maybe.
She's 27. She can.
And then I'll apply for the job.
You'd be great at that job.
This wasn't even on the docket, but this is worth talking about. We can get back to tariffs if we need to. But the press room's also going through some changes. They want to revoke press passes for like the New York Times, ABC, NBC, these sort of legacy media companies that you've heard of. And then they put up an open application to social media influencers, so they can be in the press room instead, that can only end poorly.
It's the replacement that bothers me.
So what?
Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that the New York Times or ABC has never been biased.
Sure.
I'm not an idiot. They have been very biased at times to a lot of people.
Sure.
But how is like a Instagram influencer going to provide a better source of truth to people?
Yeah, no, there's
Like-
something to be said for like being part of the Associated Press. Like they have certain standards that even if they write in sort of a biased way, you can at least trust that usually the information they're working from is correct, right? I gotta say less. I've been real bad today.
This is crazy. I just saw this article from USA Today, and it says Levitt is the new White House press secretary, but don't worry, she has political experience. She was an intern at the White House during his first term. It's like that seems like a giant jump from an internship to the White House press secretary at 27. Well,
Uh,
good luck to her. You
yeah,
know,
maybe
and
she'll come into the role, you know. And again, I'm speaking this from a sense of I want this individual
to
to
do
not
well.
be scarred by this experience
Yeah, yeah.
and, you know, to be successful or whatever. But she's also got the toughest president to do this for, too. Yeah.
Okay. She's
No,
a
what I was thinking is we should apply. We are social media. We are the media. I think we should put in an application for. It's like an open application. You just go on the website and fill it out.
Imagine the rise of this podcast if next week we
We
were
can
in
get in
that
the
room.
press room. We're in DC.
Dude, are we doing this?
Carolyn, I'll just ask the nicest question. I'll be like, Carolyn, you good? Blink twice if you
Blink
need to
twice
get bailed out here.
if you're good. How you feeling?
Blink once if you need a softball question. Blink twice if you're ready for my actual question.
Okay.
Blink twice.
Well,
Okay. Hey, what's going on?
yeah. What's
Just
going? What?
explain it all again.
We're not mad at you,
Um,
Carolyn. What's taking place today?
But yeah, so that's on the
Yeah,
press angle.
seems like a nice.
The
Seems
tariffs
like a
are
nice
coming,
lady.
man. And did you have any thoughts on the tariffs? I feel like we sped by that, and that's going to be that might be the most important thing we talk about today.
How is it going to affect people day to day, and how fast do you think?
40% of the things that you consume are going to get 25% more expensive, but also anything that relies on those 40% that we import is also going to get partially more expensive because they use those, you know, materials or whatever it may be. So we'll see, man. I'm hoping it doesn't just crash the economy. It could. I mean, it's probably the biggest economic single thing we've done since the New Deal, but even the New Deal was spread out over a period of time. The other kind of compare to I have is when we got rid of the National Bank for like 2 years and it just also crashed the economy. Or in 1812, when we tried to embargo Britain and France and then realized that we needed their trade way more than they needed us. And again, crashed the economy. We crashed the economy like 3 times in the first 20 years of the American.
What's
Like, we really were just trying stuff. Like,
what's the potential positive impact of these tariffs, if anything?
okay, all stars align, right? Trump's low key a genius or extremely lucky. Let's just play this situation out. Um, American goods end up being sold more. That's the thing that bothers me about this one is it really is hard to imagine the upside here. One of it could be like maybe this just ends up being a really good revenue source and that the actual money from the taxes we can use to, you know, pay for the deficit and stuff.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that might be cool. Um there's potential that there's some American competition that increases, but again, like because it's so broad, right? It's just there's so many externalities there that it's really hard to see where businesses are going to be able to take advantage of the situation.
Let me ask you, how do you feel about the philosophy of like you always take things to the max to start, and then you whittle your way back down to something reasonable? You find your ceiling,
Right.
and then you work your way to where you should have landed in the first place.
Right.
It's a really great, like, it is in some walks of life, it's a great way to like get to a solution quickly of like, I'm going to hit
Yeah, no,
my
I'm with
highest
ya.
note and then find my range.
Right.
As
Good
opposed
for,
to just like,
weightlifting and stuff for sure.
well, maybe don't try to put 500 on the bar, but
Well, no, you work your way up very quickly is the way I would put it. Like on your first
no,
day.
I'm talking like,
No, I see what you're saying. I'm just
Yeah.
saying like literally with weightlifting, you don't start with 500 pounds and see if you can do it, but you do go like try to find that max right away.
yeah, so you
See what
can
I'm saying?
then, yeah. So that's
Um,
also a philosophy I could think. Like maybe they are expecting these tariffs to suck at first and just not work.
Why do damage in the first place if you don't?
Because
I think that's when that strategy falls apart. Is if you do damage in that process. If I use my weightlifting example, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I go a little too hard and maybe I should have done 180 pounds instead of 190, and I'm like a little sore for the next week, like that's not the worst thing in the world, right? I will bounce back. I'll be able to be fine. The way to recover from that is clear. If you knock an economy off course, even if you take the tariffs off, the damage might have already been done. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, look at a lot of the inflation we have is from COVID,
Yeah.
and we haven't figured out how to deal with that yet.
Mm.
So we're gonna do something else that's inflation. Like, I just don't. It's so much harder to put that genie back in the bottle You know,
Mm.
um, I just don't. I know a lot of people are excited about it because they think it's going to be better for American labor, but it just I don't. How? You know what I'm saying? It's just
Yeah.
these aren't products that we're trying to compete on in the first place, right? Like this
Yeah,
isn't.
it's like
We've
it's not like we've been trying and losing. We just like
right.
don't give a about making better maple syrup.
Right. And you know, there's maybe something because Trump really gets obsessed about trade deficits,
Hmm.
which all that is it's the amount that you export to a country, the amount that you import to a country, right? Add, subtract, and then, you know, one country is going to be getting more than the other.
Yeah.
The reason the United States ends up being a net importer with a lot of things, and we have trade deficits with a lot of countries, is we have money. I don't think people realize the United Kingdom, uh, London, even the wealthiest part of the UK, has the same median income as Mississippi, one of the poorest US states,
Yeah.
right? And that's like a really well off Western country. Like, even the UK, by example from others, is like a really strong economy. Like, that's the levels that we're playing at. The states that we look down on are other countries like best swings. Um, And so that's what, like, we have a deficit because we have the money to afford things, right? We can get Nintendo Switches and fancy Italian cars and all the, you know, stuff like that. That I'm not saying that's what a lot of these imports are, but point being, like, we have a deficit because we can afford it, right? Um, we're from a position of power. It's weird.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see how they go.
We'll see how it goes.
Yep. Hopefully the stars align.
Yeah,
Um,
maybe there's just something there that I'm not seeing, and most other educated economists and experts aren't also seeing. But yeah, we'll see. It's again, hopefully, it's if it backfires, they're able to put that fire out quickly. If not, you know, I suppose the point I'll make to kind of end on is the absence of policy towards inflation, right? Like, there's just been nothing that's been directly, again, if I'm looking at the two biggest, it's always the economy, but then if I'm looking at the two biggest parts of the economy, it's grocery prices, housing prices, right? Like, I would be so laser focused on those issues, it's not even funny,
yeah.
right? And I think the problem is those are hard issues to fix. You can't fix those in a week with an executive order. But I'll be curious kind of in the coming months, looking at like approval ratings and stuff. It's not a perfect measure, but it's what we have. Seeing how much of this stuff is like breaking through to the public, right? And how much the administration gets tagged with a lot of this stuff and how people react, because a lot of the difference in the recent election was high information versus low information voters. And the people who were low information and they were upset about inflation and stuff like that, they voted for Donald Trump, right? But if this stuff breaks through to those voters and they feel impacted in a meaningful way, I could see, you know, a big switch in how people feel.
Yeah. Yeah, they have to do well.
Yeah.
They're,
Anyway, that feels appropriate. We covered tariffs. Did we say what a tariff is?
yeah, it's just an extra tax on imported
Tax on
goods.
imports.
Yeah.
And then the reason it's a problem is it usually gets passed on to consumers,
Yeah, like,
right? Just like a sales tax.
we just
Right?
pay
You,
more
you
now.
pay the sales tax, right?
Yeah. They're not
And
going to start making less money. They're just going to charge more.
right, right. And I think that's the thing that conservatives have kind of been, not, I won't say conservatives, that's unfair, but the people who have been pushing these tariffs, like, just refuse to believe is that the price will be paid by Americans. They're like, no, look, Canada's going to pay it. It's like, no. Either they'll pass it on to Americans or they're just not going to send us the stuff. And then, like, that's not helpful either.
Yeah.
Anyhow, it's another brick in the wall, my friend.
Another brick in the wall. We'll figure it out. We will figure it out.
Or we won't.
Yeah, or we won't. That's
I'm
also
not
the
going to
other
make that
option.
promise.
That's also the other option is we don't figure it out
We don't figure it out.
and life sucks or something. I mean,
It's not,
or it
and
gets way better. Really, nobody knows. To be clear,
Yeah.
no one individual actually knows. I think perception's much more important.
Yeah.
So go outside, smile at your neighbor, be nice.
There is like a weird third thing that could happen. I'll just throw out there.
Is it nothing? Could nothing happen?
Nothing will definitely not happen. I can tell you that something will happen.
Damn it!
We could face some economic pain from the tariffs, but it could be covered if AI takes off in a meaningful way, in like the same way that Clinton was really helped out by the internet being invented.
Yeah.
If AI is one of those like magic technologies that could, like, you can run an economy on, maybe. I doubt that's the case. I just want to throw out that like there could be some other external factor that can hedge against that. Anyhow, that's what we got. I hope everyone watching this just yawned because they saw you yawn.
Sorry.
You just hit that wall hard. You hit the wall that we're building with our bricks.
Yes, I did. I hit the wall
Actually,
face on.
We're building a bridge. We're building a bridge. One brick at a time to build a bridge. Yeah, it's not a wall. It's a bridge.
Oh, dude, I have
That's
to.
the metaphor.
Oh, that's so much
Maybe
work.
we're building a house too. I don't know. Like Tower Bridge in London is a tower.
I have
and a
been
bridge.
building a wall this entire time. If you know what we're building, I need to know. Concrete is
we're
not
5
cheap.
bricks in. We can just curve it. It's not that high.
But what are we crossing? Anyway,
The information gap.
Oh.
Knowledge gap. That's my metaphor. Big thank you to everyone who's been listening so far. Again, if you find this helpful, please share with people.
Yeah.
I had one of my students say she listened, and she said it wasn't that bad, which is Gen Z for she quite liked it.
That's awesome.
So I know. We love that feedback. All right. That's it. That's what we got. Stay sane, everybody. Don't freak out.
Yeah.
It will be okay, even if it's not okay.
Remember, there's only so much you can control. Enjoy being around people that you like, eating food you like for now while it's cheap.
Yeah.
Like, go for a walk.
So ominous.
Enjoy the sun or something. Talk about it, but don't let it control how you feel. It's going to be fine.
And never forget that we're the United States of freaking America. I think that's the thing that keeps me going, is there's not a single thing we can't do.
USA.